So, I don't understand why you're not allowed to talk after washing your hands. You know, my first Shabbos, I show up and I'm just so happy I followed the Hebrew for the blessing, and then everyone is like staring at me because I can't stop talking about how excited I am that I just said my first Hebrew blessing, and then they're like, when they do say something, they just like stare and they go, new, and I have no idea like what's going on. So why can't you talk after you wash your hands?
The situation that Eliza described at the beginning is probably not too unfamiliar to many people, and that is going to a Shabbos meal and at some point many people falling silent, and that is a situation that I'm sure there's a word for it, could be described as
shabbakward.
Yes, that's an interesting term, but how would that be described?
Shabbakward is a very interesting category of time when we are gathering at a Shabbat table. And when we gather, there's not always a homogeneous group. Some people know, some people don't know what's going on. There's a lot of different things can happen, whether it's washing hands, knowing when to sit and stand for kiddush, a lot of inner language, inner behavior. So shabbakward happens in these kind of cases when people aren't really exactly sure what to do, and we're sort of have a awkward pause in different situations, and those are different situations. So that's the awkward, and then shabbakward because it happens on Shabbat.
Oh, okay. So that I think is a fair description of the situation that Eliza described at the beginning, and I think that can also be applied to other situations. Looking back at this question, we actually see that there are two possibilities for what to do at the beginning of a Shabbos meal. We actually see that this shabbakward moment really arises out of an interesting halachic situation. There are actually two different ways in which to conduct the beginning of a Shabbos meal, whether that is to do kiddush first, then to do washing, then to do hamotzi, or the other possibility, which is to wash hands first, and then to do kiddush, and then to make hamotzi. The main text at which we can look is found in section 271 in the Or Chaim section of the Shulchan Aruch. There, Rabbi Yosef Karo, the 16th century Turkish rabbi who later went to Israel, was saying that this is what we do. We make kiddush first, we wash our hands, and then we make the blessing of the bread, hamotzi. But thereupon, Rabbi Moshe Isserles, who lived around the same time, however, in Poland, said, actually, what we do is we first wash our hands, then we make kiddush, and then we make hamotzi over the bread. And he further says, this is our custom in all our different lands, mainly the Ashkenazi, the European lands. And furthermore, he says, one is not to do otherwise from this minhag. That's fine what the Sephardim do, but us Ashkenazi need to retain our sense of identity by doing this particular practice in this way. With one exception he adds is on Pesach night at Seder, because it would be such a huge interruption between the time of washing and actually doing kiddush, so just do what Rabbi Cairo says, and that you can do. Rabbi Yisrael's comment that this is something that we're not supposed to do otherwise or change is actually contested. There's some who say, well look, you have Rabbi Cairo who's saying that we have this perfectly good thing of doing kiddush first, then washing, then doing hamotzi, and you know, what's the risk? Because then at least we don't have to worry about maybe possibly making an interruption with either action or with talking between washing and hamotzi, which in a separate section in the Shulchan Aruch, there's actually, Rabbi Cairo interestingly sums it up as saying, there are some who say you don't need to be careful about making an interruption between washing and hamotzi, and there are those who say you should be concerned. And then he adds, and it's good to be careful. The concern, at least articulated in the Mishnah Berurah, which is a work about a century ago, is that of hesach hadas, of sort of losing sense of what you're doing. Now, for people who are washing on account to make sure that their hands are clean, if you lose sight of what you're doing, you may come to dirty your hands and thereby sort of mess up the whole reason for which you actually washed your hands, and that obviously would not be good. But there are those who say that this isn't really such a huge concern because you're going to pretty much have your mind on what's going on. And if we transpose that to our situation here, doing kiddush in between the washing of the hands and making hamotzi is not going to be a huge concern, because after all, kiddush is part of the meal, and that's something you're not going to lose sight of when you're doing that. Hopefully this has answered the questions raised at the beginning, why people do this. It seems to be the washing of the hands, silence, and then hamotzi seems to be about a consideration of not losing sense of what one's doing, not dirtying one's hands, and not totally losing sight of, oh wait, we're about to have a meal. However, there's another custom that is having kiddush in between the washing the hands and making hamotzi, which is also halachically totally fine, and that is not as concerned about losing sense of what you're doing, because after all, the kiddush is part of the meals. Now that you know this, now you can do it yourself.